Welcome to the EXCELcast. My name is Mark Clegg, and I'm the chair of the EXCEL department here at the School of Music, Theater, and Dance at the University of Michigan. And I'm here with Dean Aaron Dworkin, who's our inspiration, really, with EXCEL, as sort of our founder, and founded the Sphinx organization when he was an undergrad and a master's student here at the School of Music. And it's really your example of entrepreneurship, I think, that has inspired the EXCEL program.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be part of it in any way possible, and it's great to be able to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. So we're here not in your role as dean, but actually in your role as Professor Dworkin, because you'll be joining us teaching for the EXCEL program this coming year, and hopefully for many years in the future.
Yes.
And you'll be teaching two classes, right? A course on sort of creative entrepreneurship and a course on leadership.
Absolutely.
So, let's talk a little bit about the creative entrepreneurship course first. I mean, what are you going to do? How's it going to work? What's it about?
Yeah, so, in many ways, there's, a school of thought about, how do you really teach entrepreneurship?
Right, it's just it's a talent, right?
Right,
it's a magic.
Exactly, and is it innate and all of these things. And so the reality is that there are not just skill sets that you can learn, but there is also a mindset that you can have that really helps to create a foundation, a template, upon which you can build from these creative ideas and actually turn them into sustainable enterprises. And so this course is really designed to do that from the get-go. So to talk with students about how do you actually think like an entrepreneur. What does that mean? And what does it mean to really be creative? And then to take that to really ideation. How do you even come up with an idea? So there are some who are like, oh, I have just too many ideas, I don't know how to turn them into an enterprise. But there are a lot of students who are like, well, I don't like, how do I just come up with ideas? Like, I think I could be a phenomenon. I think I can change the world in certain ways. I think I have things to offer. But how do I really come up with that idea that I can take forward? So we're going to actually take some classes to focus on ideation and how you actually formulate an idea you can bring forward. And then actually take that to then how do you take those ideas and build them into sustainable enterprises? And that entire process, which includes how do I gain resources to be able to support the idea, and then how also can I present about my idea, because the reality is if you yourself think you've got a great idea, the only way it's going to move forward is by engaging others, those who will help join with you, those who will help support those efforts, those who ultimately will be your constituent base, and how do you present your idea to those various audiences. So we're going to tackle all of those things, so in the end really help to understand the mindset of creative entrepreneurship and then develop the skill sets that actually can bring about successful projects. And then, of course, in the end, have a capstone project where every single student will actually be able to develop their own creative entrepreneurial idea and actually bring it forth.
Now, you did that when you were a student. So how did the Sphinx come about? I mean, how did the University of Michigan sort of help bring that to bear? And what were the sort of the things, I guess, maybe that spark, the skills that allowed you to make that happen? Yeah,
so one of the things that I think makes me just really excited about all of what EXCEL does, but especially, for example, this course, is that when I was a student, we didn't really have a platform. There wasn't a formal process, formal coursework you could go through. And so what I ended up doing was really just tapping a host of different sources and resources as a student. And thankfully that included not only really engaged faculty, but also the dean at the time, Dean Paul Boylan, who really helped to engage in supporting my efforts as well. And so what I ended up needing to do was pull from a whole variety of different parts of the university and parts of the school to try to begin to cobble together this idea that I had. And so a big part of what we want to try and do with this course is to actually be able to provide a singular template, a singular opportunity and access for students to be able to develop their idea. So for me, it literally was born out of my own life experiences. So I'm a biracial, I was adopted when I was 2 weeks old, and so I have both my birth parents, my birth father who's Black Jehovah's Witness, my birth mother who's white Irish Catholic, my adoptive white Jewish family, and so in the end I was all of these different things, but that was all built into beginning to play the violin when I was 5. And so this idea of what about diversity in performing arts? What about musicians of color like myself and facing the challenges that I faced? And could I create a sustainable enterprise that could impact something in the world that I cared deeply about? And that is what I then began to go about doing.
Well, it sounds like many of the topics you'll be covering in the course are sort of similar to your Aaron Ask videos. I mean, I know this week's episode was YOLO, right? You only live once. And
absolutely.
I think that's one of the things I find so inspiring, not only about your leadership with the school, but just the way you've brought this energy to Excel and how your example helps us, is because it's not necessarily you're fearless, but you know that the goal you're trying to get is worth the risk that you're about to take, and you're willing to make that jump. And I think that message to our students is going to be fantastic. And I really do hope, and I think, your course is going to fit so well with the EXCEL program, because all the funding streams that you had to go to the dean and the provost and really work up the chain that, most people, the students probably don't even aware of all these different layers at the university, but you've now made this available. So we have these grant programs for student projects. We have our accelerator to start a whole new venture. So a student trying to create a Sphinx organization today has a lot of support. And I hope we see those kinds of organizations coming out of your class.
I look back and I go, man, if there would have been an EXCEL program when I was a student, I can't even begin to imagine how much easier it would have been to start Sphinx. And there is, I am kind of driven with a number of these projects, and I, if you will, see myself as a serial arts entrepreneur. But it's not even, they talk about courage, right? So courage is not the absence of fear, but action taken in the face of fear. One of the things that I'll actually cover in the course, but I really don't even have in any way this absence of fear. It's just that I often fear inaction more than I fear doing something. So for example, as I thought about issues of inclusion in the performing arts, and specifically in classical music, I had more fear for nothing happening, nothing changing, than I did for putting myself out there to at least try and make a difference. So in some ways it was less fear to actually try and do something about it than it was to just sit back and go, really? This is just going to continue as it is. And just in the hallways of our school, and just being in the commons, you hear these incredible ideas emanating from our students. And I think about kind of this future world that we can live in that has those ideas that we now hear in our commons or in our hallways or in the dorms actually come to fruition to be sustainable enterprises. Not only the arts world, but I think just our entire society will be transformed.
Well, that's fantastic. So your other course, you're going to be teaching it, but you're going to be bringing in a few guests, I hear, right? So this is a course on arts leadership?
Yes, so the Arts Leadership Forum. And so one of the things that I found was incredibly valuable for me as I was trying to develop Sphinx or any of the other projects that I've worked on is access to those who have already walked that path. Not only to hear from them, here's what you should do, but also to observe and hear from them, here's what I shouldn't do. And to be able to avoid some of those pitfalls and to learn best practices and all of that. And to learn it from those who have actually been out there and, if you will, got their feet wet, hands wet, and have just been delving in it and are currently delving into it. And so could we then actually develop a course where every single week we bring in one of these leaders and enable them to actually come and present to students and share, here's my ideas on what to do and how to approach these issues of entrepreneurship and leadership. But then also to provide the time for students to directly engage with them, to read background on them, to read some of their writings, and to be prepared to come in and ask really interrogative questions and to challenge some of the ideas they're hearing. How does this relate to me? How does this relate to my own experiences, my own goals within entrepreneurship or arts leadership? And so to be able to have that, and through the course of a semester, 12 or 13 of the most incredible leaders in our field is literally just transformative and invaluable for students. And then, of course, to be able to take what they've heard and then to actually write about it and to be able to formulate a thought about how does this relate to me, what have I learned from this, and how is it informing my own ideas and my own progress. So I think it's going to be really dynamic. We cut across a host of areas. So We'll have some arts leaders, those who are leading some of the largest arts institutions today. We'll have those who are actually practitioners in the fields of dance, in theater, or in music, and to talk about how have they brought entrepreneurial skill sets to their own performance work, and so that they can actually build sustainable careers. And then also scholars and thinkers. So it's really across the board to provide a breadth of this experiential impact. And then one of the things too that I think is really important is that the students are going to be able to, in a relatively small setting, directly engage with these leaders, and that will also develop a relationship and a network. So the students who take this course will actually, at the end, not only have this knowledge base and experience, but they will now have a network base where they can, go to the computer and shoot an email or pick up the phone and call one of these leaders and say,
amazing.
I'm working on my idea, and here's a way in which I was hoping you might be able to help me go to that next stage or that next step.
So I'm sure every time you teach the course, the mix of visitors will be different, right?
Yes.
But do you have any names of people you're either thinking of inviting, or that just an example of the kinds of leaders you're thinking of bringing on board?
Yes. So without kind of sharing any names just quite yet, as we get all of the contracts signed and agreements signed, until then I'm like, until they sign on the dotted line. But they'll definitely be dynamic. I could say that I have initially gotten verbal commitments, more than we have available slots to actually engage
Fantastic.
with students. But if you think about, for example, our nation's, some of our nation's most prominent arts institutions, arts presenters, their CEOs are part of that. Some of our dynamic practitioners, whether it be in theater or in dance or in music, are on that list. And also those who are delving not just in terms of just specifically the excellence of their own art, but into communities and into community engagement. So we have those who really have been leaders at the forefront of inclusion or in community engagement, who have understood and figured out how to take their particular art and impact a community, and so they'll be able to share that as well.
Fantastic. Well, obviously having a dean teach is not a typical thing we see at really any school across the country. So there's a couple accommodations we've made for your class. One is that you're going to be teaching sort of an intense seminar on Mondays, right?
Correct.
So you have a morning seminar and an afternoon seminar.
Yes.
And those will be basically 3 hours long, so
Yes.
a pretty big block.
Yep.
I expect that you're going to have about 3,000 people wanting to take this class, including me. I'm sold.
Right.
I'm signing up.
Cool,
and
cool.
But how do students actually, get into the class?
Yeah, so for that we do want to, because the classes are relatively limited, and so students literally can just email me because they are by permission only, and we want to make sure, and I want to make sure, that every student who's taking the class is really serious about it. So for example, the Arts Leadership Forum, we are bringing in leaders whose time is incredibly valuable, and I want to make sure that every single student in the class really wants to be able to just draw the most out of this time that these leaders are providing us. And the same for the creative entrepreneurship, especially with the capstone projects at the end. I want to make sure again that we have students who very specifically want to be able to have these skill sets and then utilize them in a very pragmatic way by the time they complete the course. And logistically, students can just shoot me an email at Aaron Pau, AARONPAU, at UMich, and there'll just be a few kind of initial questions that I'll just pose, just that relate to their interest, what they want to get out of the course, and what they'll be able to offer the course. Because for both of these courses, it won't just be myself, if you will, as professor and or the visiting guests that we have who are extraordinary leaders, but it will be their fellow classmates who will absolutely play a key role in the impact and what all of the students learn. And so I encourage everyone to check it out and to send me an email.
Well, that's fantastic. I think, it's going to be an amazing experience. And so students who are basically ready to make a jump or who are really willing to invest in this course and give to the course are the ones who are going to get the most out of it. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'd say overarching all of it, those who absolutely not just kind of want to, but know and are prepared and believe that they will be one of the next pivotal leaders in the entirety of the sphere of the arts and its role in society in the coming decades. they are the ones who will absolutely transform and make the most from these courses.
All right. Thanks, Professor
Great.
Dworkin. It's great to
Thank
have you aboard the
you.
EXCEL
Thank
department.
you so much, and thank you so much for your leadership of EXCEL, which is
it's an honor.
extraordinary.